This is KMCV Channel 7, the only local channel covering all of the CNMI.
KMCV News is coming your way.
Here's a quick sample of some of the stories that you'll see in the next half hour. The Saipan delegation went into session today to discuss the Island Zone Plan. They also talked about CUC's debts.
And CNMI leaders are gearing up for the annual DC budget hearings. Our 702 agreement will once again be the focus of federal scrutiny.
A Filipino worker is injured in a traffic accident on Middle Road this afternoon. He's in guarded condition this evening.
Those stories next on KMCV News.
Buenas noches para todos. Hamzu Tata Saipan Luta Zantinian Guahu Si Carlotta de Leon Guerrero.
Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday edition of KMCV News. I'm Glenn Wakai. We'll have weather and sports in just a few minutes.
But first, topping our cast this evening. If the Saipan delegation doesn't adopt a zoning plan soon, the current version becomes law. That's why members of the zoning board expected to field a lot of questions at this morning's delegation session held at the legislature. But at the top of the agenda instead was whether to forgive some loans that the Commonwealth Utilities Corporation had because of money that they borrowed from the Commonwealth Development Authority. Senator Juan Torres was one of the delegation members who favored this resolution.
Let's not turn our backs to this agency. They have problems. We cannot run away and say, hey, you take care of yourself. We are the policy-making body of this government. We provide guidelines. We provide solutions to these problems.
Representative Heinz Hofschneider, on the other hand, says he didn't like the precedents that the CNMI would be setting if a loan forgiveness was granted to the agency.
Beneficial because it teaches discipline to any agency that borrows money.
Finally, the zoning board was called upon early this afternoon. The main concern from Representative Hofschneider was whether families could build additional houses on their land.
Comes in and says, I cannot build my third daughter or my third son a dwelling. It's going to come down to us. And we're going to be starting to amend spot zoning occurs like Guam. Well, we don't want to get into that habit of spot zoning for specific individuals or groups or entities.
And the plan is expected to pass when it comes up for a vote. The Saipan delegation is was still meeting up until just a short while ago. They've since adjourned and they will meet again at 2 o'clock tomorrow.
Here we go again. CNMI leaders will be making their second trip to Washington, D.C. in less than 2 months. Once again, the purpose of the visit is to justify its financial request from the federal government. On May 4th, CNMI representatives will present testimony to a U.S. House Appropriations Subcommittee. The Commonwealth is still smarting from the hits it took from last month's House Oversight hearing. Resident Representative Juan Babalta says a familiar issue will again take center stage.
One of the items that are going to be that is going to be touched upon at this hearing is the request for our multi-year funding assistance.
This time the CNMI will have company at the table, as other insular areas will also be justifying their federal funding requests. Babalta says it's an annual appropriations hearing and not planned as a quick follow-up to the March hearing.
The March 18th hearing dealt mostly with policy and issues. And I think that this hearing that Chairman Yates is calling for, as I said, it's an annual thing and it's going to be more technical.
Since returning from the March oversight hearings, government leaders have been scrambling to address issues raised by U.S. congressmen. Babalta is confident that the tone of the upcoming meetings will be quite different from the last one.
We've met over this. We saw the list and we've made some recommended changes here and there. And I think that we're prepared. The government is prepared to go and present our request before the before the Appropriations Committee.
KMCV will cover the entire congressional hearings on May 4.
U.S. congressional efforts to terminate the $120 million 702 agreement and impose U.S. immigration laws here are misplaced. That's according to one local lawmaker. Representative Pedro R. de Leon Guerrero says Section 902 of the covenant is the mechanism to use to air concerns and settle differences.
This is the section that puts together this special representative appointed by the President of the United States and a special representative from here appointed by the governor to address this type of issues, immigration issue, for example. Let's address that. And if we do not agree, then maybe that's the time Congress should put together something that will penalize the CNMI or would even help the CNMI.
So you're saying rather than unilaterally trying to change this, they should use this Section 902, which was established for this type of purpose?
That is correct. Other than that, Section 902 will become meaningless.
California Congressman Elton Gallegly introduced the two bills on April 1st. The first bill would terminate the 702 financial agreement. He says the NMI has attained a standard of living comparable with the United States. He also advocates imposing U.S. immigration laws here because he writes there have been, quote, serious abuses of the immigration authority granted to the NMI, end quote. And continuing with local news, a 29-year-old Filipino man is in guarded condition tonight at the Commonwealth Health Center after his car and a dump truck collided this afternoon. The accident happened about 1 o'clock on Middle Road near the East-West Rental Center. Witnesses say the truck from Sablan Construction was heading north and the victim's car was going south when they ran into each other. As you can see, the front end of the automobile was totally mangled. The driver of the dump truck, Joe Garcia, says it was too late to do anything when the blue car crossed the divider.
Already in front of my truck. So what can I do?
According to CHC, the unidentified man has facial lacerations and abdominal pains.
And coming up next, the outgoing general manager of the Hotel Nico Saipan talks about Article 12.
And he did that after the hotel gave $30,000 to the Joten Kidzu Library for the purchase of new books.
After the recent court filing of an Article 12 lawsuit that pits Marianne Noni against businessman Larry Hillblum, attorney Bruce Jorgensen says that Noni's attorney Ted Mitchell was triggered to file this lawsuit due to his alleged personal hatred towards Hillblum.
We'd like to offer our assistance, and we hope that the Bar Association will ask other attorneys to do the same thing.
Mitchell argues that a lawyer cannot file a lawsuit without first undertaking a reasonable investigation of the underlying facts of the case. He says Jorgensen's accusations have no legal foundation.
I was formerly employed by the government for nearly 2 years in Rhoda. I did not complete the 2-year term, which would have permitted me to waive in, but I have substantial service with the government. And if I was a new employee, a new recruit, with one of the government agencies, I would not be permitted, or I would not be required to take the bar exam. So I think there's a good chance that the judge will permit us to do this.
Mitchell adds that whatever personal and professional feelings he may have against Hillblum have nothing to do with the Noni versus Hillblum lawsuit. Here's that soundbite. And moving right along, Jorgensen lives in a house on Hillblum's property. And a recent Article 12 decision favoring a landowner has intensified fears in the private sector. Large investments have all but stopped flowing into the Commonwealth. The question now facing local leaders is how to reopen the floodgates. It was inserted into the covenant 18 years ago to ensure future generations have a place to call home.
At least our people and our children of the future would not look back, and when they look back, it's no more land for them, you know. And that's basically why that Article 12 provision is there.
But the future prosperity of the Commonwealth is now in jeopardy. Guerrero says the courts have made their own interpretation of Article 12.
I think that Article 12 is becoming one of the biggest concerns to our investors and developers.
The The recent Superior Court decision voiding the lease between Philippine Goods and the Wobbles has sent shudders through local businesses. The Hotel Nico Saipan is poised to be the biggest loser in the Article 12 foray. Outgoing General Manager Toshimi Yoshida still supports the intent of the provision.
However, we like to have some kind of protection to protect our investor too. So we would like to ask governor or governor's office or legislature to do something for the investor like us.
I think that Article 12 is becoming one of the biggest concern to our investors and developers. So likewise, I think we should try to come up other than, aside from what the court interpret, of the Article 12 issues.
The Nico's expansion plans have been put on hold until its pending lawsuit is resolved. And meanwhile, the CNMI Contractors Association has done a comprehensive study on the effects of Article 12. Tomorrow we'll reveal the details of that report.
After several rounds of talks have taken place between the Hafa-Day Hotel management and its contract workers, management has finally agreed to reinstate 4 of the workers who were denied renewal of their contracts. This is according to Hafa-Day Hotel's attorney David Wiseman and the workers' attorney VK Soni. Soni, however, says that the labor management agreement is limited only to reinstating the workers. He adds that 3 of the workers are now back to work, including Victor Perez, the man who pursued the workers' strike against the Hafa-Day Hotel, and the other worker who returned to the Philippines has not yet decided on whether to accept the offer made by management. Soni and Wiseman both say that negotiations will continue over the workers' other labor claims. As Toshimi Yoshida steps down as general manager of the Hotel Nico, he leaves behind a special mark in Saipan. Instead of throwing a traditional Nico farewell party, Yoshida and the Hotel Corporation decided instead to donate the money that they would have used for the party to the Jotenkidzu Library. The governor and finance director Eloy Enos were on hand yesterday to receive the $30,000 check from Nico officials. Yoshida wants the money to be used for a special corner in the library dedicated to tourism materials.
The library is most good place because every people can enjoy our donation.
The governor also took the opportunity to thank Yoshida for all his work on the Economic Council by giving Yoshida a rare gift.
Seals as we hand out. It only people that we value as very close friends and something that he contributed to the people of the Commonwealth and our government. So because, as I stated, that you are one of those officials, one of those persons who help us in many ways, and the advisory capacity as you have as a member of the Economic Advisory Council to the governor, we want you to carry this plaque, and wherever you go, you are with us.
Thank you, sir.
Okay? Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yoshida will be leaving for Japan this weekend, where he'll pack up a few more of his belongings. Then he'll head off to his new post next week as the general manager of the Nico Hotel in Mexico City, Mexico.
And we revisit a story we mentioned earlier in the newscast. After the recent Article 12 filing lawsuit that pits Marianne Milne against businessman Larry Hillblom, attorney Bruce Jorgensen says that Milne's attorney Ted Mitchell was triggered and compelled to file this lawsuit due to his alleged personal hatred towards Hillblom.
I think that Mr. Mitchell has a personal vendetta against Mr. Hillblom, and I don't know what has triggered his animosity towards Mr. Hillblom. But I just think that it's a personal matter, and I wouldn't be surprised if Mr. Mitchell pursues this as much and as hard as he can. I just think it's triggered by his vindictive nature.
Mitchell argues that a lawyer cannot file a lawsuit without first undertaking a reasonable investigation of the underlying facts of the case. He says Jorgensen's accusations have no legal foundation.
His accusation that I filed that lawsuit as a vendetta or to be vindictive to Mr. Hillblom is an accusation of professional misconduct on my part. And it's not true. And either Mr. Jorgensen doesn't know what he's talking about at all, or Mr. Jorgensen knows the truth and is deliberately stating a misrepresentation. We investigated the facts and the law of that case, and we filed the case because it has merit, both factually and legally.
Mitchell adds that whatever personal and professional feelings he may have against Hillblom have nothing to do with the Milne versus Hillblom lawsuit.
But that has nothing to do with the Milne versus Hillblom lawsuit. Nothing whatsoever. Mr. Hillblom violated Article 12. The lawsuit is based on that simple premise. We intend to prove it. As far as I know,
Jorgensen lives in a house on Hillblom's property.
There will be more light than usual tomorrow afternoon. Between 1 and 5:30, the Department of Public Safety and Department of Public Works will be testing the island's traffic signals. Drivers passing through the Michael Marianas High School, Nauru, and Asperdido intersections will have that relax on red and go on green light kind of feeling. And drivers are advised to proceed cautiously and heed all roadway markers.
And the yellow light is on. Time to slowly proceed into a peek of this year's CNMI beauty contestants. Over the past few weeks, it's practically been a full-time job for them. 8 of the island's young ladies are running for the titles of Miss CNMI Universe and Miss CNMI International. The big event is tomorrow, but the girls have been shopping and preparing for the past few weeks. They've also been treated to a sunset dinner cruise and dancing aboard that boat, a brunch with First Lady Matilde de Leon Guerrero, and a tour of the La Fiesta San Roque shopping mall in San Roque. KMCV News has the exclusive rights to tape and broadcast tomorrow night's pageant, which will air Saturday night on this channel. And speaking of beauties, we have Long Shot Willie with our sports for this evening.
Thank you, Glenn. We'll have scores and highlights of today's Major League Baseball, and we also have highlights of Saipan's Amateur Basketball Association. For today's sports fans, we have another Bob's Baseball Bites. Bob Codine, one of our commentators from Monday Night Baseball, is featuring a profile on each team of the Saipan Major League. Tonight's feature is on the Seabees.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Bob's Baseball Bites. Tonight, we'll look at one of the most successful teams in the history of the Saipan Major League, the Seabees 4. This year, for the first time, they are sponsored by the L&T group of companies. And of course, they are again managed by Mario Taitano. The coaches include Ray Tepetep and former Athlete of the Year for the CNMI, John Areola. Their Hill leader is right-hander Caleb DeLay, who last year pitched the Blue Sharks to the Championship Series. Also expected to see mound action are Nick Castro and Wilbur Ada. Behind the plate is Jess Angui, a rookie who has a gun for an arm. The first sacker is Mike Camacho. He hit .310 last year. Mike Munoz, Frank Malsol, and Jess Mesa will share duty at second base. The Rookie of the Year last year was the shortstop Nick Guerrero. His brother Mike The Rock can also play short, outfield, pitch, catch, and well, he can do anything now that he's fully recovered from last year's debilitating injury. 10-year veteran Darius Rekemasek mans third, always among the league leader in batting. He hit .349 last year and provides steady defense at third base. Over in left field is former All-Star power-hitting Tony Regolafoy, the cleanup hitter. Dennis Camacho patrols center fielder. That speedster has 3 inside-the-park homers in his career and sported a .400 batting average in 1992. James Otta, who led the league in batting last year with .531 clip, can play right field along with newcomer Stali Delberg. Paul Tenorio and Robert Kittigwa provide good bats off the bench for the CBs. This is Bob Coldine. Welcome you to Bob's Baseball Bites at Civic Center Field.
Last night, the Seabees lost to the Termites by 2 runs with a final score of 10-8. You can catch the replay of last night's games this coming Saturday. Tonight at the Civic Center Baseball Field, you can catch Senior League Baseball. The game is between the Cougars and the Hustlers. We still have Saba games, and the playoffs are coming soon. Last night's games were between the Sunrisers against CK Spouting and the Cyclones challenging Lebwell. Here are highlights of the game.
At the Ada Gym, Saba teams met for another battle. In the first game, the matchup was between Sunrisers and CK Spaulding. For the Sunrisers, the high scorers were Tom Tadella with 35 points and Rick Benakmo with 26 points. For CK Spaulding, George Mosca was their top scorer with 27 points. The final score was Sunrisers 103, CK Spaulding 90. In the second game, the Cyclones were on a whirl as they beat Lebwell 84-77. For the Cyclones, the high scorers were Jerome Ikopo with 17 and Felix Palacios with 16 points. For Lebwell, Tony Lozama was high scorer for the game with 19 points. Don't forget to watch Saba live every Friday night on this same channel.
Welcome back. You might have noticed that our weather forecaster is one of the beauty contestants for Miss CNMI. So you have me. The surf tonight will be 4 to 6 feet on northern clockwise through southeastern beaches and reefs and 2 to 3 feet elsewhere. The seas will be slight to moderate at 3 to 5 feet. Our tides tonight begin with a low of 1/10 of a foot at 7:11 this evening. Our next high tide after that will be 2.2 feet just before 2 o'clock tomorrow morning. For tonight, we can look forward to partly cloudy skies with isolated light showers. The winds will blow from the east at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Tomorrow's forecast is just like tonight's, partly cloudy skies with just a shower or two around the island. And that's it for weather.
Carlotta, you filled in well for Vicky, I must say. We're out of time, but don't forget to tune in tomorrow night at 7 o'clock for the John Anderson Show with our guest, garment industry spokesman Robert O'Connor.
On behalf of the entire KMCV News team, thanks for joining us. We'll see you again tomorrow. Good night.
Good night.